My name is Anna Kadieva and I'm talking today about why middle schools are a weak point all around the world and what can be done with that problem. I work now as a principal and the managing partner of Sallay International Academy. Sallay is a middle school. I will talk a little more about what we do and for whom in, I would say, 20 minutes. But basically we have two schools. For now, one, an international, a big one, that has students from all around the world, and we have a small branch of, smaller version of our school that exists only in Russia, that is for Russian-speaking students. So it is obviously smaller, and I'm less involved in that one than in the international school, so today I'm talking about middle schools in general, and here is the reason why I know a lot about middle schools all around the world. It's not because I do an international middle school, it's because I have been doing, ever since I was 18 years old, educational camps for students from all around the world, so-called Marabu camps. They started as math camps and then became generally educational in all disciplines. We have had students from everywhere, from the United States, from Russia, from Europe, from South Africa, from Australia, from Singapore, from different Asian countries. And as a result, we have seen, Marabu was initially designed as a camp for students aged 10 to 14, and then we made an extension that is called Marabu Summer School for teenagers 15 to 18 years old. So we have been working with middle schoolers that came for holidays to our different campuses from the whole world, and all of them were pretty unhappy with their middle schools where they went. And their parents were telling all the same stories and had more or less the same complaints. So we put things together and decided that we can say what's wrong with middle schools. So basically, what have we learned? We've learned that middle schools are a weak point everywhere. Not only in your country, I don't know where you're from, United States, Russia, Europe. It's not the best, link of the chain. There are good high schools and there are good elementary schools, but middle schools still remain a weak point. Here is what's wrong with middle schools. The problem is that when a student goes to an elementary school, a kid is young. It's like kids are 5, 6, 7 years old, depending on the country, and they stay in an elementary school till the age of 10 to 11 years old, also depending on the country. And so they learn a lot when they are in elementary school, and basically, if you are a parent or if you remember yourself going to school, you probably remember that the most important thing about elementary school is that the student has to like it. If your kid comes home in a good mood from an elementary school, that's a good school. Success. Congratulations. Everything's fine. Then there is something called middle school, which happens from 10, starts at 10 or at 11 years old, depending on the country, and then some students go to high school at 13, 14, 15, or even 16, also depending on the country. And then there's this high school, which is a pre-university, pre-college education, very serious, with very challenging curriculum, very high demands, and, that's also understandable. Like, if your child comes home from school when they're a high schooler and they're smart, then you are happy as a parent. What should happen to a child who comes home from a school if they are 12 years old? That's the problem. And that's the question. And the problem is that what happens within those 4 years that lay between school is just a fun place and school is a very challenging place is that motivation drops. So basically students just don't like going to school when they're 10 to 14. Why? Well, there are two answers to that. First is the intellectual challenge drops. So when a student goes to elementary school, they actually learn a lot. They learn how to read, how to write, how to interact with other people, how to live in a community, how to organize themselves, they learn some basics of self-discipline, and that's a lot. That's really challenging for such young kids. Of course, it's very challenging in high school, but in the middle school, for some reasons, students spend ages learning some things that can be learned pretty quickly, because they are considered to be too young for interesting things, but too old for simple things. So as a result, they get stuck in some kind of, that's too easy and yet too boring as a result, and so they just don't like studying. And yeah, the second reason that is called in my presentation as the school doesn't reach age-specific goals. Well, here the reason is that age-specific goals are basically different goals that a student has to achieve within their age group. So young students have to, like, at 7 years old, they have to learn how to interact with other people. At 16, they have to master college-type essays that they might need on a SAT exam. And then what should they do at 12 years old is also a question. Something that was considered to be age-specific goal 50 years ago, 60 years ago, when middle schools were designed, changed because time changed. And so, not going into deep psychology, now the school doesn't reach age-specific goals, whereas more age-specific goals for these kids now is to keep them motivated. So as a result, students who are not motivated in studying when they are 12, 13, 14 years old don't get to a good high school. If you want your kid to get to a good high school, you are a parent, you need to put much effort in that, because you need to hire some special teachers, you need to make your child visit the world, take them to the museums, watch some complicated movies and discuss it with them on your own, because at school your child is bored and not interested in getting to a good high school, because they just don't see why getting a good high school, that's so boring. The reason to that, why it so happens, lays in history of school education generally. And generally the overall, like, the answer to what changed, school changed over the last 100 years. The world changed, but the schools are a little bit slower than the world, because schools are big institutions, and that's what happens to big institutions. So why people needed middle schools 100 years ago? Well, first reason, for ideological goals, and this is something we'll mention later. Second thing, middle school was kind of social elevator. If you were from a poor family and your parents would be doing some work you didn't like, you might think, oh, I don't want to work in a grocery store for my whole life. I want to go somewhere else. I want to improve my quality of life. I want to do something more interesting. Then I need to go to school. That's something children could think 100 years ago about middle school. Today, no one thinks of middle school as of a social elevator. Graduating from middle school is not enough to achieve anything. It cannot elevate you anywhere. Well, graduating from Ivy League, probably yes, but Ivy League it's not middle school. Third point, is something we call accommodation, which is not boarding schools. Well, boarding schools as well, but they still exist for that. But basically, 100 years ago, people lived in the worst life conditions, and so as a result, going to a school just to have some food or to spend their day in some warm place was a nice reason for big percentage of students all over the world, not only in Russia, as you might know if you have Russian background, but it is also something you find in memoirs about the UK schools, French schools, and I guess Americans as well. I live in France, so I know a little more about Europe, but I guess it's all more or less the same for the whole world. And finally, that's a fun point. Schools, of course, were a place where students could satisfy their curiosity. If they were interested to learn some more things about the world, they would go to school. Today, if children are interested in learning more things about the world, they go to Google. And Google is quicker, clearer, and more efficient than a teacher in answering simple questions, of course. So 3 out of 4 points are not viable today. Ideological goals is still a reason for middle schools to exist, but the problem here is that sometimes, very often, schools the ideological goals that school follows is not the same parents would like to have, that would like their children to follow. So sometimes it's a good thing, but from parents' viewpoint, from a student's viewpoint, that's not the main point. Another thing that changed in middle schools. So that's how the world changed, and this is how middle schools changed. So on one hand, as world developed, people started saying, well, why would I need to learn by heart how to calculate the surface of a sphere where I can Google it so much quicker? Why would my child need to know so many facts about periodic table, about engineering, about advanced math? Maybe you have heard, of course you have heard, this question, Mom, am I ever going to use this rule from geometry in my life? And probably the answer is, well, no. On the other hand, what people started thinking in 21st century, in the end of 20th century, was, well, I would prefer myself or my kids to know more about their inner world, about psychology, about social sciences, about social studies, about, people around, because that's something they use in daily life. Short answer to those questions is no one needs the theorem after they graduate from school, but everyone needs their emotions. So let's pass from science, from STEM, from math to humanities, which is natural at some point, but goes too far on the other hand sometimes. Another thing that happened is something we call passage from academic knowledge to skills. You hear a lot if you work in education, or if you are an interested parent, or maybe you hear less if that's not your field, about soft skills, about skills that need to be developed first. And once again, why would a student need to memorize a great poem by heart, when they can spend this time on improving their leadership or leader skills, or I don't know, teamwork, project development, and all these kind of things. So that is also something which is very important, but you should not forget about academic knowledge at the same time. It is still important to know something, not just to spend the whole time leading other people. And finally, there is something about the inclusion when people started saying that people are special, people are different, everyone is special, people are different. See above, passage from science to humanities, talking about emotions, talking about the inner world. And then people said, well, wait, why should we put apart everyone who's a little different from us? Maybe students with different conditions can go to the same school as students without any diagnosis. That should be a good thing for the society and for the students. On one hand, yes. On the other, actually providing students with a good inclusion is a hard and pretty expensive job to do. And unfortunately, very often schools don't have the resource, don't have money, don't have enough special education specialists, don't have enough time to organize a proper inclusion. And so it all results in the fact that students who could improve faster, who could take more, learn more, who could do more, are suffering because of the students who were included. What's wrong with the curriculum? As a result of how the school changed, at some point, people have decided generally that as informational deprivation is almost a non-existent phenomenon today, as I said, no one goes to school to satisfy their curiosity. People go to school for some other reasons. They satisfy their curiosity elsewhere. The importance of overlearning and remembering and memorizing and, repeating dozens of times decreased significantly. But on the other hand, as well as the value of pure facts, but on the other hand, what became absolutely crucial is a skill to distinguish real facts from fake news. And so this is why we think we have to take these points into consideration. We have to admit that the world has changed. And this is how we suggest we could change the curriculum. That's a picture, a famous picture about how education changed. I like it because when I first met it, someone posted it on Facebook among my friends. Someone came and comment on that like, well, maybe it is important for students in 2018 to have a task color the rectangle with the color you prefer, because, well, that's something maybe they don't like geometry, and that's the only way they could feel something positive towards geometry. Well, my answer to that is no. Students have to feel something positive towards geometry. Something positive towards geometry, by the way, is called interest. So children, kids, students should feel interested in the geometry, in math in general, if you teach it well, if they see that it is something interesting, not if they color the rectangle and use math and science and school program or any school subject as art subject. Yeah, that's something about age-specific goals that changed. As I said, nowadays age-specific goals are... So yeah, that's what I was saying, is that the problems related to age-specific goals, which are basically socialization goals, normally cannot be solved in a regular school because teachers lack time and all the other adults at school lack time that they can use to interact with students outside the classroom. They see students on the class and then students go home. On the other hand, as I said, soft skills became more important, and so focusing on soft skills made the curriculum less challenging. Choosing between academically strong curriculum and soft skills development, people opt for soft skills more and more, and so as a result, the curriculum becomes weaker and the school becomes less interesting place. So, to sum up everything I was talking about, it is almost impossible to combine strong curriculum that would provide some challenging tasks that would be interesting things to learn, with social and emotional support of students. And this is the problem of the middle school. The motivation drops because it is either too hard or too easy, and it is either too focused on soft skills or not enough focused on soft skills. And so basically keeping balance became a very, very, very hard task today. As a result, homeschooling is something becoming more and more popular. This data comes from before the lockdown, and I guess it would be very interesting to see how number of homeschoolers changed after the pandemics and distance schooling. But one thing that, by the way, we have heard a lot from different people is that when last year students went on distant learning in their regular schools, it's been the first time parents actually witnessed and heard what they're doing at school, and they were shocked, they're doing nothing at all, they're doing nothing interesting. That's not something positive. This is, as you can see, in the UK, in the United States, homeschooling was a rising phenomena already before the pandemics. I think it will become even more common afterwards. I know that homeschooling is forbidden in France from this year, so data from my country is not relevant. Finally, answering the question, what should a good middle school be like? We think that it has to combine three crucial points. First of all, it has academically strong curriculum. Secondly, it has to provide students with the possibility of skill development, any kind of skill development. Finally, it has to have an inclusion, but the inclusion has to be a good one, well-made inclusion. Answering the question, how are you doing an academically strong curriculum, if you are saying that it is something hard to do when nobody knows what will they need in 20 years, in 10 years, in this fast-changing world, here's an answer we suggest. We think that there are skills, let's say, that have to be developed by the curriculum, and middle school is a good time and age for students to work on those, which are, first of all, ability of system thinking and seeing how facts are related to each other. Learning a fact is not something interesting. Seeing how the world is a complex place where everything is somehow influencing everything else. Seeing how something is a result and a reason of something else at the same time is an important skill. So this is why we think that system thinking is a crucial skill for today's world. Second thing is critical thinking, which is this distinguishing fake news from real fact. An ability to fact check, to think and ask, does this look reliable, or is it something I can rely on, or is it some yellow pages? The ability to ask questions and look for answers is an important skill. And however the world changes, however more accessible the information becomes, this is something students would need, today's kids would need in 10 years old. In 10 years, I'm sure they would need it. So, and finally, of course, creativity, which is, being creative is always good, and it is twice better if you are in a fast-changing world, because you would be able to adjust to the changes quicker and easier. So, what we made in Sallay Academy, we have adopted so-called blended learning system that ideally doesn't work quite like this year because pandemics and travel bans all over the world, but basically what we wanted to be and how it worked last year before COVID is that we have a mixture of on-site sessions and online periods, where on-site sessions are 3-week-long periods where all students from all over the world come to one place, which is normally a Sallay campus in France, and there they interact with each other, they work on projects, developed all kind of soft skills, and as all teachers also come, and the counselors come, and the advisors come, we all have time and space and a great possibility to develop all kind of interactions, to develop all kind of soft skills. This is something important on one hand, and then they have 2 months online, which is more dedicated to academic part, which provides us with the possibility to have the best teachers from all over the world and have an international school, because students don't have to live all in the same place, study together, they can live almost anywhere. And we have a absolutely great team of teachers who would not move from the places where they live to, I don't know, Burgundy, France, in order to teach, because they have families and their lives, etc. But they can do it 4 times per year. So as a result, we can reach the best teachers, have all the best students. This is how we work, and I would say that it works pretty well for now. So what we believe in is that students have to be challenged, they have to be engaged, and then they get interested. And if they're interested, their motivation doesn't drop. And if their motivation doesn't drop over the course of middle school, they get to a good high school, and then in high school they can prepare for a good college, and finally good college is something all parents today are aiming for. The combination of an engaging curriculum and positive socialization that we can provide during the on-site sessions, or that you can provide elsewhere, gives the results that we're reaching for. I would say that this system works well, but I believe that you won't just believe me because I say so. Like, I work in a school and I think that it's a good school. Maybe you agree with me. Maybe you do not. I will be happy to answer any questions if you have them, if you write them in chat, if you ask them orally. I hope you still... How about puberty? Does it contribute to the loss of motivation? I would say that it does if you don't know how to deal with it. Basically, puberty is the period when kids becoming adults say, hey, wait a sec, everything that was happening before is probably not exactly what we need. And then they also start saying, you parents, you adults, you teachers don't understand anything in my complex soul. What can you do, you people born in the last century? That's what they say today, and so on. So the puberty does contribute to it, but on the other hand, that's speaking of age-specific goals specific for the age of, let's say, 12 to 14. We're lucky not to work with students that are on the peak of its puberty, because that's high school, actually. When they get interested in the opposite sex, when they get interested in trying drugs and alcohol. Luckily for us, that happens like later. We work with students who are younger. But anyway, yes, of course, providing students with the proper socialization, talking to them about what they're feeling, what they're experiencing, letting them make their mistakes is something very important for us, let's say, whenever they come to campus. Once again, a little less this year with the pandemics when we have very high responsibility in terms of safety, a little more in normal life. We'll let them interact with each other as they want. We'll let them make their mistake. We let them have experience whatever they want to experience at the same time with like making sure that it's a safe zone and that they're secured. So I would say that yeah, it does contribute to the loss of motivation, but also the worst part of puberty, let's say, the worst like transition point is something that happens later after middle school. And once again, if by the time a kid is interested in discovering the adult's world, they are like 15, 16 years old, if by this time they're not interested in studying, well, it is very hard to get them back. That's too late. You have to start early. You have to start while they're 10 years old, 11 years old. Still kids, still more listening, more changing. There's the question, does it apply to gifted students? What exactly? I'm not sure I understood the question. What do you mean by it? Does what apply to gifted students? My analysis, I would say that it does, of course. I mean, gifted students are also people. First of all, gifted students are often what is called twice exceptional students. So they are on the one hand gifted, and on the other hand, they have some other points where they're struggling even more than maybe some regular people. And on the other hand, of course, if they are gifted, they might be very interested and very talented and very good at something very particular. But generally, of course, they also pass through all stages of growing up that a teenager or a kid goes through when they grow up. So I would say that yes. Or you may disagree with me if you think that if in your experience it's different. So there's the question, would it be possible to contact me after? Of course, there's my email, which is basically anna.kadieva@Sallay Academy. Please feel free to email me. I'll be happy to talk to you about anything education related. There's also a question if the school is working in English. Of course, it is working in English. We are an international academy. We follow Russian tradition, Russian STEM tradition, Russian math traditions. So some of our teachers from STEM department are from Russian origins, but they speak English very well and they teach in English. And of course, all our humanities department are native speaking PhD holders from the United States. Head of humanities, Matthew McConnell, has a PhD from Cornell University, and history and geography teacher Melinda Rice also has a PhD, but I don't remember where from. But she speaks some kind of perfect British-like English. I can just listen to her speak in English. That's very beautiful. Basically, everyone at school speaks English better than I do, so we are an English-speaking school.